Welcome to Simplo School. My name is Dave, and today we will discuss the different types of internal controls. We will look specifically into preventive, detective, and corrective controls. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to differentiate between the three main types of controls. Let's begin. An internal control is a policy, procedure, or mechanism. Think of a password policy or a procedure that requires employees to badge in order to gain access to a facility. Now, what specific objectives do internal controls try to achieve? To sum it up, internal controls are developed to provide reasonable assurance that business objectives will be met while risks will be addressed appropriately. Now that we know a few high-level examples of internal controls and what they try to achieve, let's hone in and discuss the three main internal control types, which are preventive, detective, and corrective controls. You will see these three main types of internal controls, whether it be in the real world or when preparing and taking the CISA exam. Now that we have some background on types of internal controls, we will discuss how to simply classify them in two quick steps. First, we will pinpoint the time and interaction between the internal control design and the risk. Put more simply, we will determine whether the internal control design addresses the risk before or after the risk occurs. Let's look at this diagram to understand a little further into detail. We will start with a preventive control. A preventive control is designed to address the risk before the risk arises. We carry out a preventive control on a daily basis. Think of brushing your teeth. You scrub and you make sure that plaque does not build up. If a lot of plaque builds up over time, it will likely cause issues. On the opposite end, you have detective and corrective controls. These types of controls are designed to address risk after they arise. An example of this is having to go to the dentist in order to address a problem with your teeth. Another way to classify the different types of controls is to know that preventive controls are proactive controls, while detective and corrective controls are reactive controls. This will help you moving forward. Keep this in mind. If you conclude that the control design is reactive, then you have to figure out whether or not the control is a detective or corrective control. Moving on to the second step, you will determine whether or not the control design is made to detect the risk or go about correcting the risk. Looking at this graph, we will start with detective controls. A detective control identifies a risk. Think of a tooth x-ray, where a dentist can identify whether or not a tooth is in good condition, while corrective controls are designed to correct risk. Think of a tooth replacement when a dentist has to go in and correct the problem. This would be a real-life example of a corrective control. Bringing together everything we've discussed thus far, we have preventive controls, detective controls, and corrective controls. Another way to understand this concept is to look at this process flow. First, you want to determine whether the control design is proactive in nature or reactive in nature. If it's proactive in nature, congratulations, it is most likely a preventive control. However, if it's reactive in nature, you must decide whether or not the control is designed to merely identify the risk or also go about correcting the risk. If the control merely addresses the risk and no action is taken to correct it, then it is most likely a detective control. If the control corrects the risk, then it is most likely a corrective control. Now I think you're in a good place for some practice. Let's ask you some questions and see how you do. I'm jumping down here so my big face does not cover the question. To start, question number 1. An internal control that attempts to predict problems before they arise is called. Think back to the swim lane diagram. Answer is preventive control. This is because it is a proactive control design that addresses the risk before it materializes or occurs. Question number 2. An internal control that remediates a problem discovered by a detective control is what? The correct answer is a corrective control. This is because the control is reactive in form and also remediates a problem or risk. Now we will apply all that we learned to IT controls and discuss some examples. Before jumping into the different examples of internal controls, it is critical for you to also do due diligence on your end to understand technology terminology. I was once in your shoes and I had to search up online to further my understanding of certain examples. Back up here again. Okay, so let's start with preventive controls. Take a minute to look at some of the examples listed for preventive controls. When looking through the list, you will notice one common theme. Controlling access to a facility, gaining approval before an action is made, and segregation of duties, plus more, are all proactive in nature. As a reminder, when a mechanism is in place that is proactive, it is likely to be a preventive control. Moving on to detective control examples, take a few seconds to look at this list. Whether it be transaction log reviews or secure code reviews, or even duplicate checking of calculations. All of these examples are reactive in nature. However, they do not remediate the risk. And lastly, we have corrective control examples. Take a few seconds to look at this list. The common theme here is that all of these examples remediate the problem. The control corrects the risk at hand. Let's look at a few questions to further your understanding of IT controls. Question number 3. A franchise with multiple locations has an automated tool that requires restaurant managers to approve supply purchases of more than a certain amount. What type of audit control is this? If you selected a preventive control, you are correct. Think about this again. It addressed the risk before it even occurred. As such, it is a preventive control. Which of the following is an example of a detective control? While looking through these, think back to whether or not the control is proactive or reactive. And think about if it is a reactive control design, does it fix the issue or does it merely just detect it? The answer to this question is the transaction log review. It is a reactive control design that reviews a risk. It does not necessarily address the risk, and that is why it is not a corrective control. The remaining options are not correct because B and C are preventive controls, and D is a corrective control. And the last question, number 5. Which of the following is an example of a preventive control? If you answered C, you are correct. Segregation of duties is the answer. The other options are examples of either detective or corrective controls. A is a corrective control, while B and D are detective controls. If you enjoyed this lesson, and if I didn't put you to sleep, please hit like and subscribe, as I will be posting more content on the way. Thank you very much.